I made a video late yesterday where I was very frustrated with folks on the left who were going for AOC, sending death threats to her and vandalizing her campaign office in New York because she didn't vote with Marjorie Taylor Greene on her amendment, on her Christian nationalist, I want to bring about the end times apocalypse amendment that was never going to pass. Right, and I've said this repeatedly, endlessly, and people argue with me about it in the comments, but destruction of property, vandalism, that is not violence. And I understand where there are instances where it can be an effective form of disruption, an effective form of protest, but that it has to be implemented strategically. It's not about venting angry feelings so that we can feel really self-righteous. And obviously, at any point in time, but especially in 2025 America, where we are seeing Democratic elected officials being assassinated, making death threats against a congresswoman is not fucking okay, y'all. The main reason I was so upset, y'all, was not because a building got splattered with paint. And most people understood the point that I was making and why I was so upset. Except for a small group of very vocal folks on the left who have that kind of rigid binary thinking. The same folks who don't seem to have strategy at all, don't have any plan. The same folks who back in the election when I was like, okay, I'm voting for Kamala, and they're like, genocide, you're a genocider, Angela, if you're gonna vote for Kamala Harris. And I was like, please tell me how Donald Trump getting reelected, even though Palestinians begged us not to let him get back into the White House. Explain to me how Donald Trump in the White House is gonna stop the genocide instead of just accelerate it. And they didn't have any answer. They never had an answer. Those same folks right now don't have any strategic plan for how we are going to stop the war in Gaza. They have no pathway. It's just stop it now without development of any kind of step-by-step strategy to bring us to a point where we can help these folks who are dying, who are starving, being starved. They're not just like starving from, some natural disaster. They are intentionally being starved. And that's why I was so angry, because not only were people pretending that they were completely incapable of understanding why partnering or supporting anything Marjorie Taylor Greene does might be a bad idea. Also because they pretend that they cannot understand nuance and incremental progress. They pretend that they cannot understand the realities of the situation we are currently in, which is where we cannot help folks in Palestine until we topple authoritarianism. We have to get to a place where we are actually capable of helping them. And that requires us to first have a stable government, where the fascists who are perfectly happy to carry out endless genocides are no longer in power. I saw that very dysregulated kind of reaction from folks on the left toward AOC as being not only not useful in getting us closer to achieving the goal of ending the genocide, I actually see it as being detrimental toward moving us closer to that goal. It is hindering us getting closer to that goal for two reasons. One, I know people don't like to hear it, but we have to build a broad-based coalition of folks who don't think like us, don't necessarily vote like us, but they also want to partner together for one purpose, which is stopping fascism. There is that group of folks on the left who want a very small tent and want to remain very morally pure, and they will not partner with anybody who has positions that they don't like. And we are at a place where we need to be willing to partner with anybody who has the one goal of stopping fascism. I know I've said this before. Y'all, we partnered with the USSR to defeat the Nazis in Germany. Please remember, we were willing to be allies with the Soviet Union for one discrete goal of stopping the Nazis, because it was a strategic move. It was a grown-up thing to do. It was looking at the situation and saying, gosh, we wish we had a different path forward, but wishes are not going to stop the Holocaust. We have to work with what we have in front of us and craft a plan that can get us toward our goal, that can get us to a place where we can stop this madness. We're sad, we're aggrieved, we're outraged over what is happening in Palestine. It cannot be about our feelings right now, y'all. We're going to have to work with people we don't like, whose positions we don't like, who make us upset. We're going to have to deal with our own distress. That is the least we can do for the children in Gaza who are dying, so that we can build a broad-based coalition that will topple the fascists so we can get to a place where we can help those folks. If you have a plan for how we can stop the genocide in Gaza as long as the fascists are in power, please leave it in the comments. Describe it to me in detail. Maybe I'll get on board with that. Maybe I would get on board with that. If you have a workable plan that can stop what is happening in Palestine now as long as the Trump regime and the fascists are in power. Please describe it to me in detail. Walk me through it so that, maybe I'll change. I can be persuaded. I can be persuaded by data. I can be persuaded by an actionable plan. So hit me with it. And that brings me to my second point, which is that AIPAC and the Christian nationalists, the fascists who are in power, have done an excellent job in seeding their propaganda in the minds of the American people. I'm not sure if it's as apparent to other folks as it is to me, but most Americans don't know about the history of that region. They don't know the history of Israel at all. And that includes Christian nationalists. That includes Christian Zionists who are like so loyal to the state of Israel. There is just this mindset amongst Christians, also amongst Mormons, of like, Israel's a good thing. We got to support Israel. Not only have they been propagandized to see all Muslims in the region as terrorists, but also to just blindly support Israel. Now, there's a chunk of those Christian nationalists who support Israel not because they care about Jewish people. They don't. They absolutely want to use the conflict in the region to fulfill their end times prophecy that will result in the second coming of Jesus, or that's what they believe. So they're just using the Jewish people. So while I know that, like, of course, you and I are like, what's happening in Palestine is absolutely wrong. It has to stop. Your average American doesn't have the same perspective on that conflict in the region because they think it is just a conflict. They either think, oh, this is what's been going on there forever, or they think that all Palestinians are Hamas terrorists. So we have a lot of work to persuade the public, and the US news suppresses what's happening there and promotes this view that people who are calling for an end to the genocide in Gaza are all radical anarchists, agitators, extremists. And folks have asked me to talk about Project Esther, and I probably will in another video, but the government is now trying to normalize that position. If you care about Palestinians at all, they want to label you as anti-Semitic. They are trying to vilify you. I mean, look what they did to Mahmoud Khalil. Look at the way Hakeem Jeffries won't even give an endorsement to Zoran Mamdani. So I get really angry when I see people taking actions that actually turn the average person off to caring about people in Gaza. You and I don't see vandalism as violence, but the average American unfortunately does. There's lots of data that shows that when you vandalize stuff, you delegitimize your cause, that you turn your average moderate person off, you make your cause seem fringe and extremist. And our like philosophical position on breaking shit does not equal violence doesn't matter if all of the public has been taught to believe that it is. If we want to help the people of Palestine, we have to build a movement where people understand that what is happening there is not okay and must stop. We have to build public opposition. And when I saw what was happening with AOC, I was like, all y'all are doing is hurting this movement. Nobody wants to partner with, nobody wants to build a coalition with people who are, making death threats against elected officials. That is why I got so angry. It's not about the fucking paint, y'all. It's about eyes on the prize. What is our goal? What are the actionable steps we can take to like get to a point where we can help these people? Not where we're venting our feelings, not where we feel really self-righteous, but where we function in the real world, where we understand that we have to build support so that we can pressure the government. We need to be working to build massive support for innocent people in Palestine while we also work to topple the authoritarian regime. And when we engage in behavior that in every way sabotages both of those goals, I'm going to get angry because it feels like we're getting further and further and further away from a place where we can stop this. And the further we get from our goal, the more people are going to die. I don't want to live in a fantasy land. I want real plans that we can follow step by step that bring us closer toward our goal. That's why I'm always asking y'all, what's the plan? What are the steps? What's your strategy? You don't have one? It's just about venting your angry feelings? And do you really care about helping Palestinians at all? If it's just about your rage and you can't let go of that to work to form a coalition, to strategize and build plans, then what are you doing? Okay, I'll probably make a part 2 for this video, so hang on.